Welcome to Dome Theory 99 here on CLNS Media. Caught up with you on Tuesday. We're going with 2 episodes this week, and great to have Michael Pina back on the network. I used to listen. He used to be on Winning Plays quite a bit back in years past, and we had you on the old Banners broadcast. And great to say now of the Ringer. Heard you on Bill Simmons yesterday or this morning, whenever that came out. Talking Celtics, talking a little bit of everything around the league. I'm bringing you on to talk some of the surprises and some of the big disappointments in the league. But let's start with the Celtics. They played last night, beat the Hawks, team that had been really good. They're beating some really good opponents overall to start this year. Nuggets had been a high-powered offense. They outraced them. They're not a great transition team, but it feels like they can run with those transition teams when they need to. They can get on the glass when they need to. That's just sort of my big takeaway with them so far to start this year, Michael, is that they're flexible in ways that they even weren't last year, even going to the NBA Finals. Like, they couldn't run offensive lineups the way they can now. They couldn't play with great pace like they're able to now at times. And even their defense over the last 6 games here is number 4 in the league. So it looks like they have upside on that end too. There's really nothing to complain about here.
No, I don't think that there is. I mean, this is one of the deepest teams in the league, if not the deepest team in the league. Jayson Tatum has made a leap into top 5 player in the world, MVP candidate, does it all. You talked about just the different ways that they can play. You can start Grant Williams, you can start Derek White. If Marcus Smart is hurt and Malcolm Brogdon can't go, you have Peyton Pritchard, who's a perfectly capable NBA player who just plays regular minutes and is pretty awesome. Sam Hauser is leading the NBA in plus minus by a significant margin, which is just like I don't even know how to process that right now. So this team is really really humming. Best offense, I should say, in the league, and just drilling threes. The drive and kick is really smooth. They've taken to Joe Mazzulla's instructions and how he wants them to play. The defense, still a little creaky, but is getting better. And, you still see some mistakes here and there with their communication and kind of integrating some newer pieces. And the front court is a little thin, but overall, they've been terrific. And I would say, for my money, the best team in the league so far.
Yeah, they're incredible, and we got a barking dog over here. We'll roll with that. What do you have any concerns with them? Is there anything like, do you just slam the book? Oh, there we go. We're back. You got me now?
I got you.
And do you just slam the book right now and say they're title favorites? Are there any lingering concerns you have about them?
I don't think there are any big concerns. I mean, health is probably it. Rob Williams, want to see how he looks when he returns. Integrating him back into the offense will be interesting to see, but I don't assume that there will be any issues. Bob, you there?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, Rob, looks like he's going to be back soon. It seems like, which is going to be interesting in itself, because then, you get 3 guards. One of them's probably going to have to take a step back in terms of minutes. You have, multiple bigs that you're trying to integrate there. And they went double big last year, which was sort of their identity. Wasn't a great offensive unit, but, they were the dominant defense in the NBA. And that lineup pretty much ran away with the best, net rating in the league last year when those 5 were together. So I think Joe Mazzulla will look at it as a positive that they can play a bunch of different ways, but you're probably going to have to find that one lineup that you're rolling with come playoff time. Have we seen a team start different lineups, different nights in the postseason? Not that I can remember.
I think that that's an advantage.
Yeah.
I think that their starting five from last year, when Rob is healthy, will be fine, and uh, you know, was very impressive on offense and defense. I think, just in the aggregate. Uh, I mean, having, it's so funny. You go back to the quote that Terry Rozier had back in 2019 about them being too talented and that kind of being their undoing. And I feel like the personalities on this roster are much better suited to sacrifice, to be flexible on a night to night basis. You have guys who know how to impact winning, like Grant Williams, for example, who can, take 12 threes one night, two shots the next, and still have a great impact because he rebounds the ball. He's evolved as a playmaker. Um, when he does shoot, he, flip the coin and the three is probably going to drop. And he's starting to make more plays off the dribble, scoring a little bit off the dribble as well. And he's one of the best on ball defenders in the entire league. So they just have so many different options. And I think personally, I'm a little surprised they're 12-3. I didn't expect them to be this good from the jump. I didn't expect their offense to be just historically one of the best offenses the NBA has ever seen. I mean, one of the really interesting stats to me is in the last 23 years, their net rating, or should say their offensive rating, relative to the league average, is fifth highest of any team. So I'm talking like, the Steve Nash Suns had two of those offenses. The 2016 Warriors were so much better than the league average on offense. The '04 Mavs were incredible, just relative to how everybody else was playing. And that's this Celtics team is right there. And we're in an offensive centered era, but it doesn't matter. They've still been just so dominant. So they're incredible. And we haven't even mentioned Jaylen Brown, who's going to be an all-star this year. Just a really, really talented team.
Yeah, and he can play even better than he has, I feel like, overall. He's adjusting to a new role. I think that's the more impressive part on top of everything is that it feels like everybody on this team is doing things a little bit differently this year. Obviously, Smart and Brogdon have to balance playmaking and minutes and all those different kind of things. That's worked out, I think, better than anyone could have expected so far. And then Brogdon goes down, and you have all those other guys step up, like you said. Brown's playing off ball, I think, more than anybody relative to last year. He's sort of moving into the screening role that he never really has before, and he's doing a pretty good job with it. Horford, just shooting threes at this point. Like, that's all he does, which is probably right. I mean, we remember him trying to post Clay in the finals and didn't go great, but he's shooting almost 50% from three. So who gets credit here? I think Smart probably goes a little bit underappreciated in it all. He ends up on the bench in foul trouble in that Chicago game in the fourth. Missoula says it's a foul trouble thing, but you're still waiting for that game where he doesn't really have it, and you go White and Brogdon over him and see how that goes. But then he comes out and, over 4 games there, I think he had something like 50 assists and 4 or 5 turnovers, some ridiculous run, one of the best passing stretches of his career. He's ascended to a new level as a point guard. I don't think he gets all the credit, but isn't Missoula running a new offense here, shifting guys' roles, turning up the pace? I think that's an easy one, but I go Tatum. Like, just his willingness to do different things, screen, roll, cut, run the floor. Like, these are things he just wouldn't do 2 years ago. If I saw him set one screen, I'd be like, wow, I've never seen that before a couple seasons ago.
Tatum's been everything that you can ask for, honestly. All the things that you mentioned, cutting into space, looking to pass, rebounding in traffic, which is just a huge part of this team and what he needs to do for them to win. On-ball defense, help side defense. He's a really good communicator. He's not really whining as much as he used to with the referees because he's finishing when he goes downhill in the paint and doesn't really need to anymore. Getting to the free throw line, just as this really assured demeanor on the court now in terms of his decision making. And that doesn't even get into the bread and butter, which is he has every dribble move. The footwork is exceptional. He can create space in the mid-range. He can post up. He can run a pick and roll and see every single thing that the defense wants to do based on the coverage, make the right read. He can hit pull-up threes even though they haven't been dropping. They will. So there's upside there from the 30. What's he averaging? Like 31 a night, something
Yeah.
ridiculous. So he's an MVP candidate. This is what I thought he would look like when he was 28 years old, and he's 24. So it's kind of ridiculous. And he's got
Yeah.
all these wonderful pieces around him and that complement him as well.
And you say all that without even getting in the defense. I mean, this guy's swatting balls off the backboard. He's locking up some big assignments, even going back to last postseason. The rebounding is obviously a part of that too, like you mentioned. And for the first time ever, I wasn't sure he could get there. And it's kind of silly to talk about because you're right, 23, 24, most guys don't hit their stride until a couple years after that. But he's already knocking on that door of the Giannis's, the Jokic's, like those guys who are at the top, Curry. And I wasn't sure he could ever get to that level, like number one in the league, undisputed. But he's already close, like 24, early this season. He could hit an even new level come second half. And like, this is incredible because we just saw him kind of hit a wall in the postseason, run into turnover issues, break that turnover record like everybody talked about. And really have trouble with the Warriors there in that championship round. And for some reason or another, he's just flipping a switch here. You ask him about it, he'll talk about that playoff experience and sort of just the frustration of losing that series. I think that's a big deal here, but I don't know. There's something else going on here. I feel like beyond that, like this does feel a little bit different in terms of the way they're running their offense. He has the ball in his hands a little bit less, so I think he's dealing with less double teams. And, I think he's embraced letting the guards kind of get him the ball close to the basket and things like that. Transition. He had some ridiculous transition numbers to start this year. I think he was like 2 point per possession through 3 games, and now he's at like 1.4. Yeah, you just can't say enough about him. It's really it's impressive, but it's also fun. And this team, we know first half last year, 2 years ago, they were the least fun team to watch in the league.
Yeah. He's, I think that his name in terms of Giannis and Jokic and Steph and Luka, those are like the only guys that I'd really definitively put ahead of him. And I mean, I didn't say Kevin Durant. I think that Jayson Tatum is on that level, if not having a higher, better impact on a night-to-night basis. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Just the willingness to participate in an offense where he doesn't need to run 35, 40 pick and rolls a game. He's perfectly fine, standing in the corner and coming off of a stagger screen, catching it, you know, elbow extended and attacking from there, or spacing the court, or posting up, drawing two, and kicking out to the perimeter and just letting the action flow from there. He's just really flexible within the offense, and he's a huge reason why they're getting so many threes up as well. And he's one of the best spot up 3-point shooters in the entire league, and has been since he's entered it. So he's terrific. I don't know, where they would be without him for sure. The minutes he also just plays a ton, which
That's
is kind
a
of
big one, right?
Yeah.
And I saw Ryan Bernardoni tweeting about that. That should be a bonus more than we talk about, like the net numbers. And, those are so good for him. He leads the league in scoring for most of last year, total points. We're always talking about points per game, percentages, all that stuff. But in this league where guys are out all the time, that 82 games could be an MVP number as much as anything else.
Oh, absolutely. I think that was, I kind of laughed last year in the playoffs when the total turnover number was getting kind of mocked for him because it was so high. I think it was, I forget exactly what it was,
I
but
think it was
like
100 right on the nose.
Yeah, and it's just like, well, okay, but the turnovers are there because defenses are like loaded up to stop him on every single possession, the best defenses in the league. And look at all the other total numbers as well. I think he led the postseason in scoring and points, and I want to say like free throw attempts, just like just really impressive overall, and someone who plays big minutes, doesn't take nights off in this era of load management. that's really important. I thought that the Pistons game was so impressive, and that's a night where there's a lot of stars around the league that wouldn't have played in that game, to be honest with you. And he did, and just kind of asserted himself in that fourth quarter, hitting just ridiculous contested shots that only he can hit.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit on a back-to-back Saturday night isn't going to go down as one of his best, but you watch the way he heated up in that second half, and you're just like, this is right up there with some of the stuff we've seen him do, because they needed it. They were down, they were behind. Horford, Brown, Brogdon all sitting. That was great. So we could talk about Tatum for an hour. I do want to get to some stuff going on around the league, because for everything going well in Boston, I feel like, we're going to have our 3 surprises here, our 3 disappointments. We could probably stack up way more disappointments than surprises so far, but we'll start on the optimistic side for some of these teams, especially out west. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on with the standings out there. We'll start with Utah, right? Because I think everybody's looking out there. Danny, taking over as CEO, and the big trades over the summer, and they just keep winning games. Will Hardy, the assistant from Boston last year, takes over as head coach. They wanted Joe Mazzulla. You keep hearing that story over and over again. You wonder what would have happened if they were able to get him. It wouldn't have been great for Boston, looking back on how things went down. Lauri Markkanen's been great. There's a lot of guys doing a lot of different things out there. Kelly Olynyk's been incredible. Some of the shooting numbers for him are just ridiculous after a really uneven season in Detroit last year. What's going on there? If you're just going to sum it up,
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they look, coming into the season, they had incredibly low expectations because they trade away 2 franchise cornerstones and are starting a rebuild, and they get back a bunch of stuff. But when you actually look at that stuff, they're all really, like, not really good, but they're good, solid, dependable NBA players. Like, they're not super young. All these guys have experience. All these guys have played in the playoffs. So I think that one thing that's really undervalued in the NBA is like having a roster or having a rotation where there's no one who's like bad playing, if that makes any sense. There's no one who's like severely flawed who's getting big minutes for you. And that's what Utah is for me. Like, they just have so much solid, reliable role players, and they're playing with this selflessness. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder. Someone like Mike Conley, as an example, who everyone said was washed up after the playoffs last season, comes in. I think he has the highest assist rate, or his highest assist per game of his entire career. He's just shepherding the offense, looks very comfortable. Someone like Kelly Olynyk, kind of overlooked, forgotten journeyman, just has a lot of like really valuable skills on the offensive end, and he knows where to be on the defensive end. He has his entire career, or at least the last 4 or 5 years. So you get guys who can space, guys who can put the ball on the floor, guys who know how to pass, want to pass. I think everyone in that starting 5 is averaging the most assists of their career. Not only just Conley, like Jordan Clarkson's averaging 5.5, I want to say. I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now, but it's just really impressive. And how they use Lowry, and how Lowry looks really confident as the guy who, coming into the season, I think no one would have expected them to have any all-stars. And if we were voting right now, Lowry would be an all-star. So it's very early, but I think this team is for real. I think this team can make the playoffs. Forget about the play-in. I think they can make the playoffs. And it's going to be really fascinating to see how Danny and the rest of the front office, Justin Zanuck, how they treat the trade deadline based on how they're playing. Are they going to sell off some of their veterans for draft picks? Are they going to take some of the draft picks they have from Cleveland and Minnesota and try to get better right now? It's just going to be really interesting. I know they're a very opportunistic front office, and they have a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah, that's the thing is, what is Ainge thinking right now? Because he obviously went in there and said, all right, this isn't going anywhere. We're going to blow this up. I don't think he loves tanking. You saw that in Boston. Like, they were at the bottom for 1 year, and then next trade deadline, he's trading for Isaiah, and they're back in the playoffs. it's tough, right? Because like you said, there's so many good players here. You can say trade this guy, trade that guy, try to undermine it and blow it up, but I don't think you want to do that unless you're starting to see it come apart. And they've lost 3 straight games now. I think some of the opposing shooting numbers were a little lucky in terms of like free throws, 3-pointers, all that kind of stuff that they were seeing from their opponents. So this will come back down there to some degree. But we'll have this conversation with the Thunder too, who I kind of want to talk about. Like, this is the year, right? Everybody's coming in. It's going to be Tankapalooza for for Victor. Like, everybody's racing to the bottom. But you get off to these good starts, particularly for a team like the Thunder, who've done it a couple of times now. They have their stars. Utah is still waiting for that centerpiece that they're going to build around. So it probably makes a little bit more sense for them to shoot for the bottom and find that centerpiece. But if you're the Thunder, you have Shea, you have a couple different pieces here. You hope Chet's going to turn into something. You're not sure there yet. There's some value, I think, and this has always been the debate. Like, is there value to making the playoffs as an 8 seed and getting that run and kind of building from there? Can you get stuck in the middle and it's better to go to the bottom and keep stacking up these young talents year in and year out? It's like that Philly versus Boston versus the different ways we've seen teams do it. I don't love tanking. That's where I'm at right now, and it's easy to say when you're losing lotteries like Detroit has, or some of these other teams, the Houston certainly, and then some of the teams that have won the lotteries have really risen up at this point. But it's so hard now with that 14%, number one pick odds. Like, even if you're bottoming out, there's an 86% chance you're not going to get Victor. So if you're the Thunder, I say just go for it.
Yeah, I think it's a case-by-case basis. I fundamentally understand the teams that are bottoming out this year. Houston, I don't think they have a huge interest in winning games at this time. I thought Detroit would be better this year, but if they're terrible, all the power to them. I think that's terrific. A team like Charlotte should just be bad. Like that. There's no upside to trying to win games if you're Charlotte. But if you're Oklahoma City, I mean, I agree with you. You have Shea, who is this, I don't even know what he is right now. He's like setting the entire NBA on fire. He had 42 points on 21 shots last night and hit a step back 3 to win in Washington. He's amazing. The Celtics were doubling him in that loss where I think he finished with 37. He's incredible. So keep him, have him develop.
I couldn't even believe you and Bill were talking about trading him the other day. I'm like, what? I would never trade that guy. And you understand because it's Oklahoma City and stuff, but I wouldn't even consider it.
I 100% agree with you. I would not trade him for just about anyone in the league, given his age, given his contract, and given where I am as an organization. I think that conversation sparked, I think, more by Knicks fans and by Raptors fans and by some other fan bases and that are trying to create this narrative that he is unhappy in Oklahoma City and he's unhappy with losing, but they're not losing.
The Knicks, man, it's always someone new. It was Zion for a second. It's Mitchell, which came close, and they can never just focus on the Obi Toppins and the.
Yeah, they're funny team. But yeah, I think that there are certain organizations where it's perfectly fine to be good now, and I think one thing that the Celtics did really well half a decade ago was develop along 2 timelines where, all right, we're going to be good with what we have now. We're going to try to win basketball games because we own all these picks from this other organization that is a tire fire. So a team like Utah, I mean, they're looking at what's going on in Minnesota right now, and they're probably like, this is terrific. Like, we don't even need our own picks. We don't need to bottom out because the Rudy Gobert, Karl Towns, Anthony Edwards situation is going so sour so quickly. That's really advantageous. And then you have, I mean, Houston owns Brooklyn's picks and they're still bad. So they're just kind of doubling up right now. And then you have a team like, let's say, Orlando, which is not good, not a good team, but they own Chicago's unprotected first round pick in this year's draft too, and Chicago's bad. So like if Orlando wanted to try to be as competitive as they can and win every game and play Paolo Banchero, 37, 38 minutes, 40 minutes a night, whatever it is, they can do that. Because Chicago's kind of trash right now. So
What a bad trade.
it's not looking good.
Yeah.
I don't think. Yeah, it's not looking good. I think Wendell Carter's like a better player, period, than Nikola Vucevic already. So yeah, not a good one. But yeah, the tank thing is, it's very polarizing. I think that the lottery reform has, as you said, 14% chance. It's really not worth it. I think. I don't know if Sam Hinkie would do the process like he did with a 14% chance, or what is it? I don't even know what the odds are to get 50 something to get a top 4 pick.
I think it's like 56. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that rule has really hindered intentional losing, which was a huge mark on the NBA as just this competitive entertainment enterprise. So it's fun to see. There's a team like the Pacers. Pacers are trying to win, and Halliburton might be an all-star, and Mathurin is like a rookie who might win Sixth Man of the Year. Like it's just a lot of fun, and I think that that's like much better for the league as a whole.
So you mentioned, I don't think you can pick a bigger headliner for disappointments than Minnesota. Like if that moment where Russell's sitting on the scorers table and they're playing defense 5-on-4 wasn't so in your face, like that would be everybody's lead for like their profile about how terrible this team is. What do you do with this group? Like I love them last year. All these role guys stepping up. They make the playoffs finally for the first time in a million years. And then they just bow right out because Towns is fouling out of games. They turn the ball over. They were in that nice position after the game 1 win against Memphis, and they could have been Memphis. But instead, Memphis wins that series, and they're a disappointment. They make that big trade to blow it up. Rudy's coming in, which everybody raised an eyebrow at. And now it's just not going anywhere. Like Russell's in this contract year. He's probably not your point guard of the future, but there's really nothing you can do with him. Towns, I'm just year in and year out, it feels like it's going in the wrong direction for him rather than the right one. And then Rudy, like I love him. He's a great complementary piece, but you need your core intact and stable, I think, to get the benefit out of having him on a roster. So you probably give this team a little bit more time. That's the first step, right? But if this keeps going like this, you already fired a coach and got Chris Finch in there a couple of years ago. I don't know what you do. You don't have much. You don't have picks. You don't have depth. I just don't know what this team's going to do. I guess is it trade Towns at a certain point?
I mean, if they, make the play-in and lose the first play-in game or miss out on the play-in, then I think that conversation will be pretty aggressive about looking to see what Carl's market value is for sure, because recouping all the draft equity that you lost is really critical when you're building around a 22-year-old, 21-year-old Anthony Edwards. Like you need picks. That's kind of really important. And so, look, I think that Minnesota's coming off a couple wins against Orlando, which is terrible, and they didn't have Paolo, and Cleveland is really good, but they didn't have Donovan Mitchell or Jared Allen in that game. Wins are wins. If you're Minnesota, you want to get them any way you can. They're above average now in offense because of those victories. Their defense is above average, but not elite. And I just don't know over the course of the season, the fit with Carl and Rudy is just so precarious. And more concerning than anything is how Ant has played. He's ticked up a little bit. He had like a million threes in the first quarter of that Orlando Magic win last night. But you need Ant to be just like the driving force of your offense. And he hasn't been, and he might not be ready for that responsibility in his third year. So it might have been just like too they might have just moved too quickly as an organization, which, if they did, that would be really disappointing to see, because I really liked this team last year. I like the momentum they had. I definitely don't think Chris Finch is an issue. He's a terrific coach. I'm a huge fan of his, and he's one of the reasons why I'm trying to be as patient as possible as I can with Minnesota, but it's very difficult. The other team that I'll just say real quick, if we're talking disappointments, the other team that's probably even more disappointing than Minnesota is Golden State, the champs.
I was going there. Yep.
Yeah, that team is they've got a lot of questions right now to figure out. I would be shocked if their roster today looked like their roster in the weeks after the trade deadline.
Let me ask one of those questions.
Sure.
Is there a world where you trade Klay Thompson? Is that even possible?
I don't think that helps you, to be honest, because his contract is not great. He's getting paid a lot of money. He's on a max deal that has, I think, 2 more years on it, I want to say. And what are you getting back? Who wants Klay Thompson? He's shooting like 33% from the field right now. I don't think that that's the solution. I think the more interesting question is, what do you do with your young guys? And are you kind of punting on we talked about 2 timelines before. Golden State's trying to straddle 2 different timelines, and it's just not working. So is that Jordan Poole, or do you dangle Jordan Poole, who basically, he's one of the more disappointing players in the league for me personally this season, and that contract is looking pretty dicey based on what you need out of a player making that much on a team that already has Steph Curry. Do you move him? Weissman's value is obviously terrible right now. Kuminga's value is also really terrible, but are you packaging those with Poole? Are you looking at your picks? Are you trying to just kind of, Draymond is the other kind of question there. And before the season started, when he punched Jordan Poole in the face, the big question was, are we going to trade Draymond? We did not extend him. They extended Poole. They extended Andrew Wiggins. So as someone who's probably not a part of their future, or potentially not a part of their future, does his name kind of pop up in trade rumors again more aggressively? Just a lot of questions right now. Steph is not a question. He's
and that's what makes it tough.
Amazing.
Like he's playing better than ever.
Yeah, so that's sad to see when he's going for 50 and they can't win, as they did last night, losing against the Phoenix Suns. The Suns team that did not have Chris Paul.
Who would you like to see play there? Like, who do you think if you could pick one player who could get this team pointed in the right direction, who could it potentially be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I want Andre Iguodala 5 years ago. that would be the player probably.
Yeah.
Just like a connector.
Does Miles Turner help?
I'm personally not a Miles Turner person in basically any scenario. I think Kevon Looney's like a better player than Miles Turner personally. So I don't know about that one, but I do think that they need more veteran. Maybe the term veteran is whatever, but they need someone who can play with Steph, play with Klay, play with Draymond, smart, cerebral player who can space, knock down open shots. Gary Payton II was that guy last year. Otto Porter Jr. was that guy last year. I think they're really missing those 2 this season, and will miss those 2 if they are to make the playoffs. So adding some more verve, experience, intelligence off the bench, I think that can go a long way for them.
I do want to do one more surprise team before we get out of here. And I'd love to ask you, but you led me there, and I'm sure you'll like talking about this team anyway. Portland, for talking Gary Payton. He hasn't even played yet for them. Is this team for real? They're at the top of the West. I love what Lillard's looking like. It's so talk about like a pleasant surprise seeing him get back to what he was before. They're fun. They're a pretty good defensive team to start this year, which had been an issue for them for like a decade. Now all of a sudden they're figuring out on that end. I love Nasir Little getting locked up there. I still have some hope for him as a player. You have some of those same pieces, and it looks like the CJ McCollum trade was pretty good for both teams when you think about Josh Hart and some of the stuff that they got back in that deal. Simons fits next to Lillard and can fill in for him when he's out. This team's awesome. And like that's a team, we always talk about the Knicks and these teams that like need to matter for the league to be good. I love when the Blazers are good. Great fan base, great experience around them. They were always fun when they're battling with those West teams, and seeing them back so quickly, at least for now, is super exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool that they're in first place. I'm not super confident that this is sustainable. You look at kind of like statistical indicators, like their net rating is that of a team that has 2 fewer wins than they do. So saying they're in first place now is really nice, but like in reality, they're probably more like a 4, 5, 6 type of team in the standings based on how they played. The starting lineup, and when you flip Drew Eubanks for Yusuf Nurkic, like those groups defensively have been like pretty bad. But I like Josh Hart. I like Sharp. I like the athleticism and the energy that they're getting from a lot of the guys. I like their length. Um, Jeremy Grant has had some really nice moments for them this season, and it's all. I agree with you 100%. Like it's just cool when Portland is above respectable, and like I can flip to a Trailblazers game at 11 o'clock on the East Coast and like no, I'm gonna get a show from Dame. Like I love that. So they're fun. I'm kind of pumping the brakes a little bit on optimism that this is for real, and they're a team that really fascinates me when you talk about like um, if things continue to go south in Brooklyn. I am so fascinated by the possibility of Portland getting aggressive for Kevin Durant. That's something I've just kept in my brain for the past few months. Like
People forget
Simons,
about the Lillard Photoshop. Wasn't that him who put that one out there when the trade
he
request went down?
he absolutely did. I have not forgotten that at all.
Yeah.
Simons, Grant, all your picks. I don't know if you move Sharp in a deal for KD. I probably would not do that, but it's just interesting to talk about because Lillard's timeline is just not really with the rest of the organizations. And I'm not going to say like the West is wide open, but maybe actually it is. Who knows? If you get KD for those pieces that I just mentioned and you have Dame playing at a really high level, like okay, that's a basketball team and they're competing on both ends, and Chauncey Billups is a coach of the year candidate so far. So yeah, Portland is fun. I just don't know if they're for real right now.
You're making me keep you around mentioning the Nets. They're not a disappointment because I had no expectations for them. What's going to happen to them? Durant, like, he's given this weird interview the other day. Kyrie's still out, finishing up these steps to return to the floor that have been so controversial. They don't hire Ime. They stick with Jacques Vaughn. Where's this going over the next month or so here?
I mean, I have no idea. They're a roller coaster ride. I thought they kind of stabilized themselves a little bit, particularly on the defensive end, and it turns out that they did not
Then they
stabilize
give up
themselves.
150 to the beam.
Exactly. So they are, they're constantly on their tippy toes. They're walking on eggshells with KD and trying to keep him happy. And I feel like where any day a trade request could drop. Any day they could just outright release Kyrie Irving. Any day, anything can happen with this team. And you didn't even mention, I don't think you mentioned Ben Simmons, who is
That's
just
an easy
not,
one to forget.
yeah, I mean, he's, you know, not one of the 200, 300 best players in the NBA right now. Like, it's just being honest. And physical health has been kind of nagging him this season, but he's a backup center. He's their backup center right now. That's who he is. And he started the season as their point guard. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know. I don't know what happens to this team, to be honest. I don't think they have an identity. I think they're still very thin in the front court, but I don't think that adding any depth there or adding rebounders would help them in any meaningful way. I think it's just they have a lot of talent, they have a lot of shooting, but guys are not buying in, and there's, a lot of turmoil behind the scenes, obviously. So, you know, they could win 10 in a row, they could lose 10 in a row. Just nothing really makes me blink when it comes to the Nets.
The Simmons thing's sad at this point, and I think he plays into himself, so there's only so much like sympathy I have. But when he's out there and they're like doing backflips that he drives to the rim and saying, "Oh, he's never played center before. Let him get used to it." Like it's like, come on, like he's miles from even getting back to where he was, and he wasn't in a great place last time he played either. Michael Pina's great. He's got a piece out on Dallas right now. Go check that out on the Ringer, talking about Luka and Wood, a combination I really like. You want to hit on that real quick before we get you out of here?
Yeah, sure. Christian Wood can't get off the bench, which is kind of hilarious to me. Last night they set a record. Their starting five scored 27 points, and he scored 26 off the bench. It's just comical because Luka didn't play. But yeah, no,
you
I
get an
wrote
award for that though, I guess, at the end of the year.
Sure, sure. But their pick and roll chemistry this season has been. I thought I anticipated it being pretty good because Luka's probably the best pick and roll playmaker in basketball, and Christian Wood is just a natural complement for someone who can make every read. He's a big who can shoot, who can post, who can drive closeouts, make plays off the bounce. Really talented offensive player. Defense is where you kind of run into some trouble there, and that's why he hasn't closed any games for them this season. But when they are together, and I think that Jason Kidd should explore maximizing their minutes together, good things happen for the Mavericks. So something to keep an eye on in Dallas. Dallas is a really interesting team this season just because they have, in my opinion, the MVP so far. But yeah, that's another situation that could kind of go either way based on how they want to play it.
I love that team. I love that trade. They didn't give up much, and we saw Harden and Wood for the minute they were together look pretty good in Houston. So I'm interested in them too. They're coming to Boston on Wednesday. That's going to be such a good game. I'm already like that. It's like 3 games ahead. I already got it circled. It's going to be probably one of the better games we've seen so far this season. Mavericks Celtics on Wednesday. Michael Pina, thanks for being here. Real quick, our sponsors are Athletic Greens. athleticgreens.com/Garn gets you a year's supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs when you head over there. Shout out to them. Good energy boost, good nutrition. Everything you need is in there. Vitamins, minerals, adaptogens, and more, as well as the Calm app. Calm.com/garden gets you 40% off a premium subscription. Sleep, sounds, meditation, yoga, wellness. It's a little bit of something for everybody in there. Calm.com/garden. You can find Michael Pina at the Ringer now. Just appeared on the Bill Simmons podcast. Go check that out, as well as his piece on the Mavericks. Michael, great to talk to you. Been too long, and hopefully we'll see you in Boston soon.
Bob, thanks so much for having me, man.